This video was made possible thanks to the support of our amazing patrons. We couldn't do this without you.
Don't forget that you can support the channel for free and receive 10% off orders over $10 at Flipside Gaming by using the promo code Affinity at the checkout. Or if TCG play is more your thing, then be sure to use our affiliate link in the description below.
Hello everyone and welcome to another EDH gameplay video brought to you by Affinity for Commander. My name's Martin.
And my name is Alex.
With today's episode marking our 50th gameplay video, we thought we'd take a look back at the past 2 years for inspiration as to what commanders to use in this video. Luckily for us, EDHrec.com have a feature that show you the most popular commanders over this period, so we just picked the top 4. Without further delay, let's take a look at those opening hands. I am playing my Edgar Markov Vampire Tribal deck. I keep an opening hand of Legion Lieutenants, Rakish Heir, Bloodline Keeper, New Blood, Sorin Solemn Visitor, Path of Ancestry and a Swamp.
I am playing my Atraxa Praetor's Voice Super Friends deck. I keep a starting hand containing Astral Cornucopia, Birds of Paradise, Swords to Plowshares, Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, Narset Transcendent, Bloodstained Mire and Bountiful Promenade.
John is playing my Lord Windgrace Lands Matter deck. He keeps an opening hand consisting of Crop Rotation, Harrow, Nesting Dragon, the Gitrog Monster, Dakmor Salvage, Rakdos Canarium and a Forest.
And finally, Tom is playing my Muldrotha the Gravetide Reanimator deck. He keeps an opening hand of Fauna Shaman, Tireless Tracker, Golgari Findbroker, Polluted Delta, Wooded Foothills, a Swamp and a Forest.
I win the die roll and start the game off by playing Path of Ancestry. I then pass to John.
John plays a Forest and passes the turn.
Tom plays Wooded Foothills, triggering my hatred of off-colour fetch lands, and ends his turn.
I play Bountiful Promenade and cast Birds of Paradise before passing to Martin.
I play Command Tower and then cast Legion Lieutenants. Edgar's Eminence ability triggers, making me a 1/1 black vampire, and I keep the top card of my library where it is with Path of Ancestry's ability. I then pass the turn.
John plays Rakdos Canarium, returning his forest to his hand. He then discards down to 7 and ends his turn. Tom responds by paying a life and sacrificing his foothills, searching his library for an overgrown tomb, having it entered tapped. He then proceeds to his turn.
Tom plays Polluted Delta before immediately paying a life and sacrificing it to search his library for Watery Grave. He has the Shockland enter untapped, dealing him 2 more damage, and then casts Fauna Shaman. Satisfied with his turn, Tom passes to Alex.
I play an island and cast Astral Cornucopia, where X is 1, before passing the turn.
I play a Swamp and cast Rakish Heir. I make another 1/1 vampire thanks to Edgar and keep the top card of my library where it is with my Path Scry trigger. Moving to combat, I attack Alex with my lieutenant and a vampire, dealing him 4 damage. I put a +1/+1 counter on my creatures who dealt damage thanks to my heir's ability and end my turn.
John plays a Forest and passes to Tom.
Tom plays a Forest and activates his Fauna Shaman's ability. He discards a creature, searches his library for Zakora Tribe Elder, and casts him before passing the turn.
I play Bloodstained Mire, triggering Martin once more with an off-colour fetch land, and cast my commander, Atraxa Praetor's Voice. Moving to my end step, I proliferate the charge counter on my Cornucopia and end my turn.
I play Opal Palace and cast New Blood, tapping a vampire token to gain control of Atraxa. Alex protests this play as he'd really rather not lose his commander, but is unable to prevent it from happening. Unlucky darling. Moving to combat, I attack Tom with Legion Lieutenants and my vampire, and John with Rakish Heir. Tom blocks my lieutenant with Stee and sacrifices him before damage, searching his library for an island and puts it into play tapped. Tom and John then both take 3 damage, and I put a +1/+1 counter on my heir and lieutenant before moving to my end step. Here I use Atraxa's Proliferate trigger to add a +1/+1 counter to all of my creatures that have counters on them, and pass to John.
John plays a Forest and casts Kodama's Reach. Nice of you to join the game at last, buddy. He searches the library for a mountain and a forest, putting the former into play and the latter into his hand, and then passes the turn.
Tom plays a swamp and once again activates his Fauna Shaman's ability. He discards a creature, searching his library for Baleful Strix, and then casts the Robotic Bird. Tom draws a card from its ETB and ends his turn, to which Alex responds by paying a life and sacrificing his fetch land, putting Godless Shrine into play tapped. Alex then moves to his turn.
I cast Chromatic Lantern, then play Watery Grave, having it entered tapped. I then pass to Martin.
I cast Bloodline Keeper, making a vampire of Edgar's ability and scry one with Path of Ancestry. I move the top card of my library to the bottom and play Boros Garrison, returning a swamp to my hand of its ETB. Moving to combat, I attack John with Atraxa, Legion Lieutenant and my 5/5 vampire, Tom with my 2/2 vampire and Alex of Rakashare. Tom blocks the vampire coming at him with his Strix and Alex declares no blocks. John then takes 14, Alex takes 5 and I gain 5. Next I put a +1/+1 counter on each of my creatures who dealt damage and move to my end step, proliferating these counters of Atraxa. I then pass the turn.
John begins his turn by casting the Gitrog monster, and then plays a forest, and Myriad Landscape. Next he casts Sylvan Safekeeper, and then ends his turn.
Tom plays a swamp, and then casts Ravenous Chupacabra. He destroys Atraxa with the Chupacabra's ETB, and passes to Alex, who responds by casting Swords to Plowshares, targeting my Bloodline Keeper. The Keeper is exiled, I gain 4 life, and Alex proceeds to his turn.
I play a forest and recast my commander. Moving to my end step, I proliferate the charge counters on Astral Cornucopia, and pass the turn.
I play a swamp and cast Patron of the Vein, scrying the top card of my library to the bottom with Path of Ancestry. I exile Atraxa with my Patron's ability, putting a +1/+1 counter on each of my creatures, and then move to combat. I attack John with my Lieutenant and 8/8 Vampire, and Tom with my Heir and 3/3 Vampire, and both John and Tom block my creatures with their own. My Lieutenant is destroyed as a result of the Gitrog monster's Death Touch, and I put 4 +1/+1 counters on each of my creatures thanks to Patron of the Vein's ability. With nothing more to do, I end my turn.
John casts Nesting Dragon, plays Warped Landscape, and makes a 0/2 red dragon egg token thanks to his dragon's ability. John then passes to Tom.
Tom casts Tireless Tracker and then plays Twilight Mire, making a clue token. Next he casts Skull Clamp, equipping it to his tracker and sacrifices his clue to draw a card. Tom puts a +1/+1 counter on his Tireless Tracker and then passes the turn.
I begin my turn by casting Doubling Season, and then cast Gideon, ally of Zendikar, who enters with 8 loyalty counters. Next I use Gideon's 0 ability to make 2 2/2 white knight tokens, and then end my turn.
I start my turn by casting my commander, Edgar Markov. I keep the top card of my library where it is, and then play Rakdos Conarium, returning a swamp to my hand. Moving to combat, I attack John with Patron of the Vein and Alex with my remaining forces. Edgar's ability triggers, putting a +1/+1 counter on each of my creatures, and John responds by casting Harrow, sacrificing his Warped Landscape and searching his library for a forest and a swamp before putting them onto the battlefield. He makes 2 Dragon Egg tokens thanks to his Nesting Dragon's Landfall ability and blocks the Patron with his dragon. Alex blocks everything other than Edgar, taking 5 damage, and all blocked creatures are destroyed. Patron of the Vein's ability triggers, putting 4 +1/+1 counters on each of my vampires, and I pass to John.
John casts his commander, Lord Windgrace, and uses his +2 ability, discarding a non-land card to draw a card. Next he plays Golgari Rot Farm, returning a mountain to his hand, and passes the turn.
Tom plays Darkwater Catacombs, making a clue with his Tireless Tracker. Next he casts Solemn Simulacrum, searching his library for a forest and putting it into play with its ETB. He makes another clue and casts Journey to Eternity, enchanting the sad robot. With nothing more to do, Tom ends his turn.
In my turn I cast Tamiyo, Field Researcher, and immediately use her -7 ability, drawing 3 cards and gaining Omniscience in Emblem form. Gotta love Doubling Season. Next I cast Terminus, putting everybody's creatures on the bottom of their libraries, and activate Gideon's 0 ability, making 2 knights. Still not finished, I cast Elspeth, Sun's Champion, and use her +1 ability to make 6 1/1 soldier tokens. Still not done, I cast Demir's Signet, and then finally pass to Martin.
I play a swamp and cast Witch-Maw Blood Arbiter. I make a vampire thanks to Edgar, square the top card of my library to the bottom with Path of Ancestry, and pass the turn. John responds by casting Crop Rotation, sacrificing a forest. He searches his library for Field of the Dead, puts it into play, and makes a 2/2 black zombie with the land's ability. John then proceeds to his turn.
John casts Hull Breach, destroying my Doubling Season and Astral Cornucopia. Next he activates Lord Windgrace's -3 ability, returning Warped Landscape and Dakmor Salvage to the battlefield. He makes 2 more zombies and passes to Tom.
Tom plays Fetid Pools and casts a DC Undead Vizier. He sacrifices the Naga to her own exploit trigger, searches his library for a card and puts it into his hand. Next Tom sacrifices his clue to draw a card, casts Scavenging Ooze and passes the turn.
I play a Plains and activate Elspeth's -7 ability, gaining myself another snazzy emblem. Next I use Tamio's +1 ability, targeting my 2 knights, and move to combat. I attack Martin with all of my creatures, to which John responds by sacrificing his Mirrored Landscape. He puts 2 mountains into play, creating 2 more zombies, and Martin casts Swords to Plowshares, exiling one of my knights. I gain 4 life, and Martin blocks my other knight with Witch-Maw. He takes 18 damage, gains 5 life from his Blood Arbiter's lifelink, and I draw a card from Tamio's ability. I move to my second main phase where I activate Gideon's 0 ability, creating a knight ally, and then cast Narset Transcendent. I use a +1 ability, choose not to reveal the top card of my library, and recast my commander before moving to my end step. Here I proliferate each of the loyalty counters on my planeswalkers, and then end my turn.
I play a Plains and cast Sorin Solemn Visitor. I use his +1 ability to give my creatures lifelink, and then cast Anawan the Rune Sage, creating a vampire with Edgar's ability. In hindsight I realise that I should have done this before I +1 Sorin, but hey, we all make mistakes. I scry 1 with Path of Ancestry, keeping the top card of my library where it is, and pass to John.
John casts Tireless Tracker, plays a mountain, makes a zombie, and makes a clue. Next he activates Windgrace's +2 ability, drawing a card, and moves to combat. John attacks Narset with 5 zombies, and I block 2 of them with Atraxa and my knight. Narset takes 6 damage, I gain 6 life, and John sacrifices Warped Landscape, putting a forest into play from his library. He makes a zombie and a clue, and then passes the turn.
Tom pays 2 life and casts Birthing Pod. He then casts his commander, Muldrotha the Gravetide, and replays the Wooded Foothills in his graveyard. Next Tom pays 2 life and sacrifices Muldrotha to his pod, searching his library for Avenger of Zendikar and putting it onto the battlefield. He makes 11 0/1 plant tokens, pays a life and sacrifices his fetch land to put Breeding Pool into play tapped. This triggers the Avenger, putting a +1/+1 counter on each of his plants, and Tom ends his turn.
I play Murmuring Bosk and use Narset's +1 ability, once again finding a land on top of my library. Sad times. Next I activate Tamio's +1 ability, targeting Atraxa and my knight, and +1 Gideon, making him a 7/7 human soldier ally with flying until the end of turn. Moving to combat, I attack John with Atraxa, Tom with my knight, and Martin with Gideon, to which John responds by sacrificing his clue, drawing a card, and putting a +1/+1 counter on his tracker. Martin blocks his Witch-Maw and sacrifices Anawan to put 4 +1/+1 counters on the Blood Arbiter. He then sacrifices his 2 vampire tokens to add 2 more +1/+1 counters to his Arbiter, and damage then occurs. Martin gains 11, John takes 4, Tom takes 6, and I gain 6. I then draw 2 cards thanks to Tamio and move to my second main phase. Here I use Elspeth's +1 ability, making 3 1/1 soldiers, cast Commander Sphere, and sacrifice it to draw a card. Not yet finished, I cast Oath of Jace, drawing 3 cards and discarding 2. I then cast Nissa Vital Force, using her +1 ability to turn a forest into a 7/7 with flying until my next turn. Moving to my end step, I proliferate my Planeswalker's loyalty counters and pass to Martin.
I draw for turn, squeal with delight and cast Merciless Eviction. I choose to exile all planeswalkers, realise that I should have done something with Sorin before I cast the spell, and reflect on all of the poor decisions I'm making this game. Moving to combat, I attack Alex with Vishkal and he blocks with Atraxa. I respond by moving 6 +1/+1 counters from my vampire to give Atraxa -6/6, destroying her, and then pass the turn. John responds by cycling Forgotten Cave and then proceeds to his turn.
John plays Smouldering Crater, making a zombie and making a clue. He then casts Yavimaya Elder and recasts his commander, using his +2 ability to draw a card. John then casts Farhaven Elf, searching his library for a forest and putting it into play. He makes another zombie, another clue, and ends his turn.
Tom begins his turn by recasting Muldrotha and replays Wooded Foothills from his graveyard. Deja vu. He puts a +1/+1 counter on his plants, pays a life and sacrifices his fetch land to put a forest into play, putting another +1/+1 counter on his plants. Next, Tom equips his Skullclamp to a Scavenging Ooze and pays 2 life to sacrifice the ooze to his Birthing Pod. Tom draws 2 and searches his library for Wood Elves, putting them onto the battlefield. He then searches his library once again, this time putting Dryad Orb into play, which puts another +1/+1 counter on each of his plants. Still not finished, Tom casts a Sakura Tribe Elder in his graveyard and immediately sacrifices it to put a swamp into play from his library. He puts yet another +1/+1 counter on his plants and moves to combat, attacking Alex with all of his plants. Alex blocks 4 plants of his soldiers and 1 plant of his forest, taking 30 damage, and Tom passes to Alex.
I cast Nissa Vastwood Seer and search my library for a forest before playing it. This causes Nissa to transform into Nissa Sage Animus, and I use her +1 ability, revealing Sorin Solemn Visitor as the next card in my library. I draw the Vampiric Planeswalker, cast him, and use his +1 ability to give my creatures +1/+0 and lifelink before moving to combat. I attack Tom with all of my creatures, dealing him 25 damage and gaining 25 life. This knocks Tom out of the game, and I move to my second main phase, where I cast Jace, Unraveler of Secrets. I activate his +1 ability, scroll the top card of my library to the bottom, draw a card, and recast Atraxa before moving to my end step. I proliferate the counters on my walkers, and then pass the turn.
I start my turn by recasting Edgar Markov, to which Alex responds by casting Anguished Unmaking, targeting Vishkal. I respond to this by removing the 3 +1/+1 counters on my Arbiter to destroy one of Alex's soldiers, and Alex loses 3 life as this spell resolves. Edgar then resolves, and I scry away the top card of my library with Path of Ancestry. With nothing more to do, I end my turn.
John moves straight to combat, attacking Sorin with 4 zombies and me with 3 zombies, Yavimaya Elder, Farhaven Elf, and Tireless Tracker. I block one of the zombies attacking me with Atraxa, and before damage, John sacrifices his clue to draw a card, putting another +1/+1 counter on his tracker. Sorin's ulti hits 0, I take 12, gain 6, and John moves to his post-combat main phase. Here he plays Tranquil Thicket, creating a zombie, and uses Lord Windgrace's -3 ability, returning 2 lands from his graveyard to the battlefield. John creates 2 more zombies, and then casts Traverse the Outlands, searching his library for a lot of basic lands and putting them into play tapped. He makes even more zombies, and then passes to me.
Alex scries 2 in his upkeep thanks to Oath of Jace, topping one and bottoming the other. He then casts Deep Blow Skate, doubling the loyalty counters on his planeswalkers, and uses Jace's -8 ability to give himself another emblem. Not yet finished ultimating walkers, Alex activates Nissa's -7 ability, turning 6 of his lands into 8/8 flying elementals. Moving to combat, Alex swings all of his creatures at John and I, killing us both in one glorious attack. Well, that's it for another episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. Don't forget that you can support the channel in 3 quick and easy ways: hitting that subscribe button, liking this video, and leaving us a comment. I read every one. Also, don't forget to check out our Patreon page and follow us on Twitter. Links to both are in the description. We'll see you next time.